Welcome to part 2 of the Introduction to Python. In this part, we're looking at 3 subtopics. The first is syntax, then comments, then variables. Before we start, just a bit of a recap from week 1. So in topic 1, we looked at our first Python program, which involved printing some characters out to the screen. And here we have an example of that. So we have print, and then we've opened and closed brackets to say what we're going to print. And in these double quotes here, we've put hello world, and Python is printing that out to the screen there, printing out our hello world example. So we also looked at the fact that Python programs have the extension .py. So, you know, the file name, and when we save an idle, it will automatically add the .py on for us. And we can run these from idle by pressing the F5 key, or going up and clicking run. Both do the same thing. So we can also run Python directly from the command line just by typing the word Python. Then the name of the program we want to run. And if we just run Python with giving it no other arguments, it will just run Python as it is. Okay, so that's a little bit of revision for next week. Our first topic is syntax. Okay, so syntax. And what actually is syntax? Well, syntax is a noun, all right? And it's the arrangement of words and phrases to create well-formed sentences in a language. So I have a sentence here, the syntax of English. Okay, now think of this sentence, all right? Diffige were 40 ge something. Very difficult to say, almost impossible to read, really. This sentence violates the syntax of English. Okay, this sentence, it doesn't really make sense. As my primary teacher used to say, a sentence must make sense. And when we have a syntax error, we'll often get a box like this that comes up that tells us that it's invalid syntax. Okay, so a short task is, can everyone type a sentence into the chat with 5 words, and the sentence must have a syntax error? Okay, so I've written here everyone, and then I've written a sentence, this sentence in fact, but I've tried to add a lot of syntax errors into it. Okay, so yeah, that's a good one there. Yeah, another one would be like if I were to write hello, but instead of using an O, I used 2 asterisks. Okay, hell star star. Okay, technically you might know what that means, but not really. Okay, so indentation in Python is very important. All right, so if we don't have the correct indentation, Python often chucks an error at us. Now, indentation refers to the space at the start of a line before the code starts. So I've put an example sentence here. This sentence here is indented. Okay. Now in Python, the default indent is 4 spaces, but you don't actually have to type every time you want to do an indent. You don't have to be like 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4, and you don't have to do it like that. If we write down if 9 is greater than 5 and press the colon here, when we press return, Python will automatically indent the next line. Now, in other languages, lines could be ended with, say, a closed bracket or a semicolon, but Python doesn't do that. Python actually needs this white space here because Python uses indentation to actually logically separate out blocks of code. Okay, and I've highlighted the indent here in red to show you. So I've put up an example here. Okay, syntax errors are common and they're easy for the computer to catch. Okay, because the computer will just stop and say, I don't understand that, sorry. Don't understand that. So let's have a look at this short piece of code that I've put here. What's wrong with this so far? Okay, I've put 9 is greater than 8. That's not true, okay? But that's not a syntax error, all right? Python doesn't know, whether 9 is greater, that doesn't, okay? 9 is greater than 8, if 8 is greater than 9. Don't worry about that. The syntax error here is the fact that we haven't indented at the beginning of the line, but also we haven't added the close bracket there. Okay, we've opened the bracket for print, but it never ends. So Python will probably just keep waiting until we say, just keep printing out white space until we say it's over. So here's the example of this, and I've got the indent was missing and also the closing bracket. And here's how it should look. So if 8's greater than 9, print, and when I press return here, okay, when I press the enter key, this is automatically indented. And at the very end here, we have the close bracket there. All right, and this will print out. This is syntactically valid, even though even though it's automatically indented here. Okay, this will print out. Okay, so if 8's greater than 9, print 9 is greater than 8, even though that doesn't really make sense. That's just me being silly. Okay, syntactically to the computer, this is fine. And now our next topic is on comments. I've worked in companies before, and I've gone in and I've said, how do you do so-and-so kind of monthly report task or whatever, and they've said, oh, we run this Python program to do it, or we run a script to do it. And I've had a look at the script, and it's been 100 lines, and there's not one single comment in there. So that makes it very difficult for me as a newcomer to the program. It wasn't me who wrote it, so it makes it quite difficult for me to start using it. I'll have to go through and try and kind of unravel it line by line. Now, if they'd added some comments to the program to say what specific bit did what, that would be much more helpful. Now, comments are sometimes called a program's internal documentation, and they're notes for the programmer or other programmers to read. And to add a comment, we just put a £, a hashtag at the beginning of the line. Okay, now there is another type of comment we can add in Python, and that's with the 3 apostrophes, 3 little single quotes. That's called a doc string, and that's if we want to write like a very long kind of multi-line comment that's used for. But for just a simple comment, we can put the hashtag here, the £, here, and then write the comment. And if we want to do it at the end of a line, we can put it there and put this as a comment. Now, you imagine Python's reading the program, read the line, read the line, read the line. Then it gets to this line. It sees this £, here, okay, and it knows ignore. Okay, next line. And likewise, when it's reading this line, it's going read, okay, print, stop the print there. As soon as it gets to there, it thinks ignore, move to the next line. Okay, so Python will ignore these lines. Now, very often, if you write a piece of code, you might go away and not come back to it for a few months, few weeks. And it can be very, very useful if you've written comments. So it says here for the programmer, that can be you or other programmers. So you're not just being helpful to other people in the future. If let's say you leave the company or you give the program to someone else, quite often you're actually helping yourself, because if you write hundreds and hundreds of lines of code every day, or every month or every year, it can be very difficult to just jump straight back in and understand immediately what something does, especially if you haven't added any comments to it, if it's just a big mesh of characters. So all programs should be commented in such a manner as to easily describe in English the purpose of the code. And a user should be able to utilize a previously written program by reading the comments. Okay, so I say that they should be written in English. That's just because we're in the UK here. Perhaps if you were working in a Spanish company, they would want the comments to be written in Spanish so that the other developers who were Spanish speakers could read them. So commenting can be said to be the art of describing what a program is going to do in high-level statements. And let's have a look at this little piece of code here. Can we tell what this does? Okay, A1, A2 is something, minus minus some other thing, then F print F, something, A1, A2. The answer is, and I hope so, not really. Okay, because firstly, we haven't put a comment to say what this actually does. And another little thing to note is that we're using A1 and A2, which are not very, very good variable names. And that brings us to our next topic, variables. So what is a variable? Well, firstly, it's called a variable because its contents can change. It can vary, okay? And we should think of a variable as a box in the memory that we can store things in, okay? So in computer programming, a variable is a storage location paired with a name, all right, which contains some value. So we can create variables in Python. We can assign these boxes using the equals sign. So equals in Python doesn't mean the same as it does on a calculator, okay? 2 plus 2 equals 4. To do that in Python, we need to use the double equals. Okay, the single equals actually is the assignment operator. Okay, so here we have some code and it's got my variable equals 5. All right, and we have my other variable equals hello. Print my variable will print out 5. It won't print my variable, it will print the value that's been assigned to my variable using this equals operator. Now, if it's a number, we don't have to put it in quotes, but if it's characters, we put them in quotes like this. Okay, so here's a small example. What we'll print, we have x is equal to 3, y, x, well, I don't know why I just automatically defaulted to y there. X is equal to 5 and x is equal to 6. So if we print x, hopefully you should know that 6 will print out. And that's because, remember, Python's an interpreted language and it reads the code one line at a time. So if we were to add another line up here that said x equals elephant, print x, it would print elephant. Okay, it prints the last thing that was assigned, and we can change the value in x anytime we like. So that's the end of the theory for this part today. If there's any questions, please fire them into the chat, and let's just jump over to our idle shell and have a look and see if we can run some examples here. So let me just open a new window in idle. Okay, and if we were to, let's test this out, x is equal to 3, okay, x is equal to 4, okay, x is equal to 5. So I've created a variable called x, and I've assigned 3 different values to it. So if we do print, okay, and we print out x, it should print 5, because that was the last thing we stored in that box in the memory. Think of it as a box called x. And when we open that box with print, out comes the value that we put into there. Okay, so let's think if we have a variable called my variable, and we're going to put into my variable the number 4. Okay, so now let me just copy this so I don't have to type it out again. If we print, okay, my variable, it'll print 4. So let's come up with a second variable called my variable 2. Okay, and let's give that the value of 6. Okay, and let's print, okay, my variable 2. So there's 6. So now let's print out, okay, open up the brackets, my variable plus my variable 2. Hopefully this should add the two together. So what Python's doing is it's taking the value stored here and adding it to the value stored here, and it's printing the evaluated result of these two. Now let's just take this statement, okay, and let's change the I character in print to an exclamation mark. Let's run. Okay, immediately, syntax error. Python does not know what we're talking about. Okay, let's take away this bracket here. Okay, and let's run. Let's run. Okay, syntax error. It's even telling us what it is, and it's highlighting it in red. Did you mean this? Yes, perhaps we did actually. So let's run it again. That's working fine. Let's try another one. Let's take away the end bracket. Press return. Now look, Python's indented us here because it's expecting us to add some other code. So let's add a curled bracket there. Okay, syntax error. Doesn't like that. Python expects us to close off this here. Okay, so there's some examples there. Now let's say we wanted to take this program and add it into a new file. We go up to File and click New File, and this should open us up a blank window in idle. And let's just paste in my variable plus my variable 2. And let's just grab these two and let's assign each a value. Okay, so let's make that one 3. Let's make that one 2. Okay, let's run this. We'll have to save it before we can run it. Let's call it my vars. Okay, so that's printed out 5. All right, when we run 3 plus 2, as we would hope, we're getting back 5 over here. Now, let's just say we want to add a little bit of a description to this. We can pop up here, hashtag, and you'll notice that this turns red. Program to add together two numbers. Okay, so Python will ignore this because we've got the comment symbol at the beginning there, and it will add these together. Now let's say we made a change here and we went for Python my variable 3 and then press F5. What's going to happen? Okay, let's have a look at the shell. It says name error, my variable 3 is not defined. Okay, so we haven't assigned anything into this storage box in the memory called my variable 3. So if we change this here to my variable 3 and run it, should hopefully give us 5 back. And there we go, look, 5. It works. So let's have a look at the homework assignment for this week. It is problem set 2. Okay, so problem set 2 is available from the Moodle here. And I'm just going to copy this across and open it up in a new window in idle. So let's do Control N to get a new window, and let's paste this in. Okay, so this is problem set 2. So if we go press F5, okay, idle will ask us to save. Now let's just call it problem set 2, okay? Immediately, we're getting invalid syntax, okay? And it's telling us that something's wrong. Now, let me just close down these two other idle programs here. Let's try running this again. Now, what you might notice is that idle is also highlighted in red where it thinks the invalid syntax is. Okay, now I'm not going to fix that for you on this video just now, but what I will do is I will say that, you know, it's telling you that there's one of your tasks for this week is to fix that. So let's look at each question one at a time. So question number 1, can you add some comments to this Python program so that it's more understandable? So we've got x123 equals input, enter 123 name, exiting 123. Okay, so it's got some spelling mistakes. The variable names are not very good. So it's meant to be used for a user to enter their name. So can you just add a comment here and maybe tidy this up a little bit as part 1. Question 2, make the following program more readable. Add an inline comment, so an inline comment here, okay, and fix any syntax errors. So we know from earlier, from when I ran it, that there's a syntax error here to fix. So that's question 2. Question 3, fix the syntax in this program so that it runs. Add a comment to explain what it's doing. The program should sum 2 numbers and have 3 variables. And finally, question 4, create a program with sensible comments and variable names that takes a number and divides it by 2.54. The title of the program should be inches to cm converter. Okay, and the reason for that is, in case you didn't know, is that there are 2.54 centimeters in an inch. Okay, so if we had, say, for example, 15, and we were to divide that by 2.54, we would be converting inches into centimeters. So I'll let you work that one out and write your program there for part 4. And that is the conclusion of topic 2. So we'll open this up for any questions now. I'll pause the recording. I'll just point out as well that we've assigned homework in the NetAcad course. And this week, if you could read topics 2.1, 2.1.4, 2.1.5, and 2.1.6. For some reason, we don't have 2.1.3. It wasn't me that assigned this, so hopefully that makes sense. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't read 2.1.3. I'm sure there's some fun stuff in there. So that is topic 2 of the introduction to Python.